All right, imagine this. You're driving down a road that's flanked by live oaks with Spanish moss dangling like nature's own streamers. You roll the windows down, catch a whiff of that earthy, low country air, and you feel the world start to slow down. That is Johns Island. But let me be straight with you. It is not just a pretty backdrop for your Instagram feed. There is so much more going on here, and today we're talking about it all. The highs, the lows, and the stuff that no one really wants you to know about until you're knee deep in it. And let's just say, by the end of this, you'll know whether Johns Island is your idea of paradise or if it's just not your cup of sweet tea. Now, let's kick this off by setting the stage. Johns Island isn't your run-of-the-mill suburban sprawl or your buzzing city center. It's this fascinating in-between, a place that's growing like crazy, but it's still holding on to its roots. You're not going to find cookie cutter perfection here, and honestly, that's part of its charm. There's something about the way the island balances old school Southern vibes with the influx of new folks that just works most of the time. Let's start with one of the main reasons people get drawn here in the first place: space. I mean, if you're tired of living in a neighborhood where you can hear your neighbors sneeze, Johns Island might feel like a breath of fresh air. And not just figuratively, the air is actually fresher out there. You've got properties with acreage, backyards that feel like their own little worlds, and a sense of privacy that is getting harder and harder to come by these days. But here's the thing about space. It comes with trade-offs. For starters, more space means fewer conveniences nearby. If you're someone who craves the convenience of walking out your door and grabbing coffee or groceries within 5 minutes, this might not be the easiest adjustment. The local businesses here are fantastic, don't get me wrong about that, but you are not going to find a Target or a Whole Foods around the corner. You might have to get comfortable with a bit of a drive for certain things. And if you have a specific coffee order that involves 6 different steps, well, you might need to simplify it a little. And speaking of driving, we need to talk about the roads. Oh, the roads. Listen, Johns Island has a lot going for it, but its infrastructure is not winning any awards. There are basically 2 main ways to get on and off the island, and both of them tend to have a habit of bottlenecking at the worst possible times. Rush hour? Forget about it. Saturday morning when you're just trying to make it to the farmer's market? Good luck. And don't even get me started on hurricane evacuations. It's like the island has all of this charm, but the roads are stuck in a time warp. And while there has been talk of improvements like widening roads and adding bridges, it's a slow process. So if you're considering moving here, just know that patience will be a skill that you are going to need to master. My name is Deneene Gary, the Southern Living Yankee. I made so many mistakes when I moved to South Carolina from Pennsylvania, and now I became a realtor so I could help others avoid those same mistakes. You can call, text, or shoot me an email today to start your search and to find out how I help my clients by paying $1,000 of their closing costs. Or you can download my relocation guide to find out everything about Charleston. The link is in the description below. Now, let's switch gears and talk about one of Johns Island's shining stars, nature. This place is a haven for people who love the outdoors. I'm talking kayaking through tidal creeks, fishing on the Stono River, or just soaking up the views of the Kiowa River. And then there's the angel oak. If you have never heard of it, you need to look it up. It is this massive live oak tree that's over 400 years old. And honestly, standing under it makes you feel like you stepped back in time. But while the natural beauty here is undeniable, it also comes with some less than glamorous realities. Wildlife is abundant, and that also includes the kind that you don't necessarily want to share your space with. Snakes? Yep. Mosquitoes? Oh, you better believe it. And let's not forget the raccoons who think that your trash cans are their personal buffet. If you're moving here from a city where the wildest thing you see is a stray cat, Johns Island might feel like a whole new world. It's all part of living close to nature, but it's also something that you need to be prepared for. I want to hit on something that I know is on everyone's mind, the housing market. Johns Island has options for pretty much every budget. But the catch is that the demand has been climbing steadily. You can find everything from new construction in planned communities to older homes with character. But you might have to move quickly when you see something that you like. The good news is that you are often getting more bang for your buck compared to other areas that are closer to downtown Charleston. The not so good news? Well, that affordability comes with compromises. Maybe a longer commute, maybe a house that needs just a little TLC, or maybe a property with a septic tank instead of city sewer. And let me just say, if you've never dealt with a septic tank before, buckle up. It is a learning curve. And while we're on the topic of houses, let's touch on the neighbors. The people of Johns Island are some of the friendliest that you will ever meet. It's a mix of lifelong locals and newcomers, and there's this unspoken understanding that everyone's here because they just love the island for what it is. But, and I say this with love, don't be surprised if you see some lively debates about things like development and preserving the island's character. People there are passionate about keeping Johns Island, well, Johns Island. Let's shift gears for a second and talk food because, wow, the food scene here is low-key incredible. From fresh seafood at local spots to cozy cafes that make you want to linger all day, there is no shortage of amazing eats. But if you're a foodie who thrives on endless options, you might find the selection just a little bit limited. That being said, what Johns Island lacks in quantity, it more than makes up for in quality. I could probably spend an hour talking just about the amazing meals that I've had on Johns Island. One spot that you absolutely have to try is Wild Olive. It's this Italian place that feels like a hidden treasure. You have fresh pasta, local ingredients, and this cozy atmosphere that makes you just want to stay for one more glass of wine. And if Italian isn't your thing, there's the Royal Turn, which is a seafood lover's dream come true. The oysters, the scallops, just everything tastes like it was pulled out of the water that morning. But here's the catch. While the food on Johns Island is great, you're just not going to have the sheer volume of choices that you might find in downtown Charleston or even Mount Pleasant. Do you want Thai food at 9 p.m. on a random Tuesday? Well, that's going to require a bit of a drive. And let me just say, if you're someone who thrives on DoorDash or Uber Eats, you're in for a reality check. Delivery options out here are slim, and the further out that you live, the slimmer they get. So if you're moving here, it might be time to brush up on your cooking skills, or at least invest in a really good meal prep service. Now, let's talk about something that gets brought up a lot when people think about living on Johns Island, the schools. This is one of those topics where it really depends on your perspective. If you're moving here with kids, you'll want to do your homework, pun absolutely intended, about the school options in the area. There are some solid options, including a few private and charter schools that people just absolutely rave about. But public schools on Johns Island have had mixed reviews over the years. That being said, the island's growth has brought more attention and funding to local schools. So things are trending in a positive direction. But again, it's worth taking the time to explore your options and figure out what is best for your family. And speaking of families, let's talk about that sense of community here. Johns Island isn't the kind of place where you're going to feel anonymous. People wave when you drive by. You run into familiar faces at the local coffee shop, and there is this just genuine small town feel that's really hard to replicate. But with that sense of community does come a few quirks. For example, if you are someone that values privacy above all else, you might find it just a little bit overwhelming. People here like to get to know their neighbors, and while that's heartwarming most of the time, it can also mean that you're getting unsolicited advice on how to keep the deer out of your garden or comments on how your azaleas are looking this year. Now, let's get back to nature for a second because I really feel like I only scratched the surface earlier. One of the things that makes Johns Island so unique is its ecosystem. The marshes, the rivers, the dense woods, they're all absolutely stunning. But here's the thing about living so close to nature. You have to learn to live with it. That means accepting that your yard might flood after heavy rain, or that bugs will at some point try to eat you alive. Seriously, if you have never experienced a South Carolina summer, let me prepare you now. The mosquitoes here can be relentless, and don't even get me started on the no-see-ums. If you know, you know. but that's why we all love our screen porches. Now, I know we've talked a lot about what it's like to live here, but we also need to touch on what it's like to leave, because let's face it, whether you're commuting to work, running errands, or heading out for a day at the beach, you're going to spend some time in your car. And if you have never experienced traffic on Maybank Highway, let me just say, it's a journey. The thing about Johns Island is that while it does feel like a world away from the hustle and bustle, it's actually not that far from Charleston. But those 10 to 15 miles can feel a lot longer when you're crawling along in bumper to bumper traffic. And while we're on the topic of leaving the island, I just want to throw this out there. Hurricane season. It's a reality of life in the Lowcountry, and Johns Island is no exception. If you're new to the area, the idea of evacuating might seem overwhelming at first. But trust me, after a while, you've just learned to take it in stride. Now, let's get into something that doesn't always make the brochures: the pace of development. Johns Island is growing. And with growth comes change. On the one hand, it's exciting to see new businesses popping up, new homes being built, and more people discovering what makes this place so special. But on the other hand, not everyone is thrilled about the rapid pace of development. There's this tension between preserving the island's natural beauty and making room for all of the newcomers. And it's a balancing act that is still very much in progress. For example, there's been a lot of talk about how to handle the island's infrastructure, roads, schools, utilities, and whether it can keep up with the growth. Some people love the progress, and they see it as a sign of Johns Island's bright future, while others worry that the very things that make the island so special are being put at risk. But here's the thing, at the end of the day, Johns Island is still Johns Island. It's this amazing blend of natural beauty, southern charm, and modern convenience. It's a place where you can sip your sweet tea on their front porch, and then you can go kayaking through the tidal creek that afternoon. It's not perfect, no place is, but it's real, and that's what makes it worth considering. So whether you're dreaming of wide open spaces, craving a slower pace of life, or if you're just curious about what makes this island tick, I hope this has given you a clearer picture of what Johns Island is all about. And listen, if you're still thinking about making the move, or if you just have questions about the area, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I absolutely love talking about this place, and I would be more than happy to help you figure out if it's the right fit for you. My name is Deneene Gary, the Southern Living Yankee. I would love to help you find home in the Lowcountry. Reach out today or download my relocation guide to find out how I can save you $1,000 on your closing costs. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for joining me. So long for today.